And welcome to another episode of Who Gives a Hoot. I'm Luke. That's Rich, who usually you don't see his face because he's too busy writing.
Yep.
Uh, and we're joined by a very special guest, first time caller, Dom Casciato. Did I
Hey, guys.
say last name correct?
You got it, yeah?
Okay. Well, we're gonna jump in with the first question, and Rich and I are both very curious about this. Given you speak three languages, you're from England, lived in the States a while, based on last name and one of those languages being Italian. There's some Italian heritage in there. Who's the cook in the house, and why is food not English?
So, first off, about three languages, one thing speaking three languages, but someone has to understand you, and I don't think anybody understands me in any of those three languages. I like to think I'm the cook in the house, but my wife is pretty handy as well. So, I think we probably have to share the crown on that one, Luke.
Okay. Are you going with the Italian cooking more, or you going with some boiled meat?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. I think I make a pretty mean lasagna. I think that's probably my specialty. My wife would say that as well. But then I'm always prone to, beans on toast or bangers and mash. So,
yeah. All right. So basically, you've just volunteered to make lasagna for a tailgate. We appreciate.
happily, whenever you want, let me know.
All right. Well, Rich has done his research as he usually does, so I'm going to let him jump into the questions that he's got cooked up.
Okay.
Well, just for a general question, you've had quite the coaching career so far. I think it's 12, 13 years now?
Yeah, 13 years, yeah.
Yeah, and you've had a lot of success wherever you've gone, whether it's developing players, raising money for certain programs, even on the field success. So what would you say is your proudest achievement as a coach so far?
It's a great question. I think there's a couple of things that stand out to me, and they're not really about on-field success. I guess two kind of things where I think I've had the most impacts. Firstly, I was a director of coaching at Brooklyn Italians, or technical director you would call it, which is a really famous amateur club in New York that has a really robust youth program. And while I was there, it was a very heavily immigrant-based club, a lot of first-generation kids. And we kind of paved the way for a lot of those kids to get into college and, get scholarships for soccer or for academics. And I think we really changed the culture at the club and kind of brought it into the 21st century, which I'm really proud of. I was super young when I kind of took that role, and, first few days felt like I was really in over my head, but then connected with the people, the key stakeholders, connected with the coaches, connected with the people within the community, and was really able to do some great things there. I think the other piece is kind of linked to that. So the last 2 years, as you know, I've been in El Paso as an assistant coach. And my first year under Mark Lowry, I also coached our under-19 team. So I was an assistant coach of the first team and coached the under-19s as the head coach. And in El Paso, again, it's very much a first generation kids coming over to the States, to Mexican parents, things like that. And most of those kids are not exposed to what it means to go and get an education. So part of my work there in El Paso was one, coaching the under-19 team. And then after a year, when I started just to purely focus on the first team, I was also heavily involved in setting up a full-time program for those guys to train every day, also attend school together, and then get college scholarships. And again, I'm really proud that I just had an impact on those young men's lives. And 7 of those kids went on to get scholarships at different universities across the US, which just wasn't happening before for kids in that community in El Paso. So I think, the football side of stuff is great. And obviously that's my passion. I love that. But I think also helping people, and especially young people, right, who maybe just need a bit of guidance or don't have that guidance at home. I think that's probably been the most impactful work that I've done.
Cool. And you mentioned that you had some partnerships with the community, both in Brooklyn and in El Paso. How do you plan on bringing that same ideology to Omaha?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think one of the things my wife and I are, most excited about being here in Nebraska is getting to know people like yourselves, right? Key stakeholders within the community, people that are in the fan base, are coming to games every week, and every community has great people. So we're just looking forward to getting to know them, and potentially seeing ways that we could help out in some capacity.
Flattery's not going to help. We're not going to cut you slack just because you're saying nice things about us. I do want to pull a little bit off what you've been talking about, getting that education opportunity for kids and community, and as you obviously there are not a whole lot of head coaching pro gigs out there in the U.S. Did the Omaha's partnership with Bellevue and providing that opportunity for young players to continue their educational careers play any part in you picking Omaha as a candidate for your next step in coaching?
Yeah, I think it was a factor, right? I'm not going to say it was a huge factor, but I think it's something that makes the club more attractive to players. So if you've got an opportunity there to help somebody get a scholarship to either get a bachelor's or a master's degree for little cost or even for free, then I think that just makes you a more attractive proposition as a club, right? To be able to bring players in. So I think any of those little things help. Obviously, in USL League One, the budgets are not huge, right? So you've got to look for every single advantage you can to be able to attract guys into your program. And I think that was something that definitely appealed to me and was definitely a plus. But I wouldn't say it was, the driving force behind it.
So follow up there. What's the driving force? Why Omaha?
Yeah, so I've obviously just heard great things about the club, and I moved into town this past weekend, and I think all those things that I'd heard about the club and the people have kind of been confirmed so far. So I think I made the right choice. I think if you look at the success the club has had in the last 3 years, being runners up, winning the league, and maybe not quite as strong in the league last year, but then having a really strong Open Cup run. To me, that made me realise that, look, this is a club that knows what they're doing. There's been some great work done there by the technical staff that's been in place, right, with Jay and Bobby and these guys. So I felt like there was a real great foundation here that I could come in and build from. So yeah, for me, it's a big challenge, right, to follow in those footsteps, but one that I'm looking forward to and one that I'm up for.
You've mentioned building off of that quality foundation set by Mims and his technical staff in the past. And I just think it's a classy gesture. So thank you for saying those nice things about the club and recognizing the hard work that they did before you were, before you joined the club. So thank you for that.
It's true, right? It's true. Jay done an incredible job. So, it's big shoes to fill for sure, but I think I'm up to the challenge.
Good. Glad to hear it. And so, speaking of education and giving people chances, there's a lot of good programs in the Omaha area. Obviously, there's UNO, there's Creighton, there's Iowa Western across the river. Even Kevin Nuss, when he was coaching at Indian Hills out there in Ottumwa, there's quality programs in this area. Have you spoken with any of those programs to try to develop, try to build any bridges with those coaches?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rich, and something I did, shortly after being appointed. I knew Johnny Torres a little bit just from, crossing paths with him in coaching circles. So I reached out to Johnny. We've been speaking about players, some other things that we potentially could be doing together. Spoke to Donovan at UNO. I know he's kind of super new there to that program as well, but looking forward to supporting those guys. Also, Bellevue, spoken with Mark Heath. I was on the phone with Mark earlier today, and IWCC as well with Mike. We've all been in contact, and I'm looking forward to fostering those relationships. But then, also realizing that helps build this soccer community that exists here in Omaha. Right, it's already very, very, very strong, and in USL League One, a lot of the time you're giving college players that are graduating their first professional contract, and I've got 4 or 5 local schools here that do a really good job with really good coaches. So I think that makes my job a little bit easier because they're feeding players into our system.
So Along that line, you obviously have drawn very good coaches to help you out with Mike Nuss, and I'm absolutely horrible with names. But how are their connections as well as yours helping build your future plans for the roster? Giving you, I'm assuming we've got a good idea of what the final roster is looking like as we're nearing the beginning of camp. Are you pulling a lot off of their experience in addition to your own in scouting, or are you relying heavily on the blocks that were already in place?
No, so I think there was a real strong group of returning players, right? That already signed on before I'd signed on. So that definitely gave us a good base to build on. Now, we've signed guys like Connor and, one or two other important pieces that are going to help us. I think if you look at my background, the last 3 years I've been purely in the professional game in the USL Championship with El Paso, and then before that with New York Cosmos. And then you look at Ledule, I'll give you his name there, Luke. All right.
Thank you.
So Ledule is coming from the West Coast, worked for a top college program out there, knows California, knows the West Coast programs, knows where the best players are. And then if you look at Kevin, that's really been, his strength. I would say over the last 10 years, he's been involved in a club called Ocean City Northeasters, which is one of the top USL2 clubs. And Kevin's always done a fantastic job on attracting players there, recruiting players, and then bringing the best out of them on the East Coast. So I think I've got a real nice balance, especially where I've been out of the college game for quite a while. You've got two guys there that really have their finger on the pulse of the college game. I think I've got, my finger on the pulse in the pro game in USL 1 and USL Championship and MLS Next Pro as well. And I think the three of us kind of complement each other really well in that aspect.
And you said that you and Ledule were in the same classes for your licensure in the past. And when you submitted your quote for the team press release, you said that his expertise and the physiological side of the game will be a huge asset over the course of the season. Now, combining that knowledge with your bachelor's and master's degree, both in exercise science and then sports management, what kind of message can we glean from that combination of skill sets?
Yeah, so I think similar, right, in terms of kind of my formal studies and I think Ledule's area of expertise. So Ledule is kind of taking it on a level from where I was at with it. So he's really gone into periodization. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, periodization in football and things like that, but he, has taken a lot of time and a lot of effort to study that stuff to a very high level with some of the leading practitioners in the world. So I think in terms of, physical loading, making sure we're doing the right amount of training every day, making sure that we're trying to avoid injuries, that's going to be Ledule's area of expertise, where I'm mostly going to be focused on the tactical side of things, decision making, how we're going to play, game plans, that sort of stuff.
So, pulling off of one of your previous interviews, I think the question was asked, since you do speak so many languages, what language are you going to talk to the refs in? And your offhand was whichever one they don't speak in, which
that was a perfect response.
Perfect response. But with our two brand new signings to the club, both speaking Italian, did you pull them in so you can cuss them out during practice?
No, that's certainly not my style. No, I don't think my Italian is good enough to be cussing people out in Italian either. So.
No, but defense has always been a very important part of Union Omaha's success. And our downfalls have come from typically injuries or other issues involving our back line, is where we started our slides in low points of our season. If I researched correctly, you yourself were a defender when you did play, which great part of the field, probably the best. Uh, what would you, depending on your style, again, we haven't seen you you pull together a squad for us yet. You may switch it up entirely, but is that something that you really try and pull for? And are you going to have more depth at defense than we've traditionally had in the past?
I think every position on the field is super important. I think getting every position right and every player selection right is really going to determine how successful you are right over the course of a season. So in an ideal world, we'd love to have 22 guys that could all step in and start at any moment in time. I think the reality is, with the budget being what the budget is and USL One financials being what they are, that's always going to be a challenge, right? And you're going to have to go out and find top young players that can come in and, challenge the starting guys. So I guess the short answer, or the longer answer, I should say, is we're trying to get the best players we can in the building. And if we do that, I'm hopeful we'll be covered in every position.
If you do need a GoFundMe to sign a specific player you really need, just let us know. We'll set it up.
I might take you up on that. Your phone might be blowing up.
Hey, that's what we're here for.
And Dom, have you been to Warner Park yet?
Yeah, I've been in the last few. Been in. We got in late Saturday night, and then came over to the stadium I think on Monday, and was there yesterday as well. So I've been in the last few days.
Okay. So you've seen the dimensions. You've seen that it's tight quarters for two teams playing a competitive match. I'm tying this into an article that you wrote for usyouthsoccer.org about the benefits of indoor training and even incorporating futsal. Now, you said that in this article, there's inherent benefits that can be taken from that kind of training, whether it's operating in tight spaces, enhancing individual creativity. So with tight quarters of Warner Park, obviously you're going to incorporate that into your training. What other sort of challenges do you think are coming your way by playing in Warner Park?
Yeah, I don't so much look at the challenges, Rich. I just think it is what it is, right? And if it's a tight pitch, I think that probably means that we need, more technical players. Maybe there's not going to be as much space as there would be on a bigger pitch. So we're going to need players that are better in tight spaces. So that will influence our recruitment in terms of who we're trying to bring in, right? Making sure we've got guys that can handle the ball, that are going to be able to control it and operate in those tight spaces like you spoke about. I'm very impressed, Rich. That article must be nearly 10 years old or something. Where did you find that?
Just doing some research.
Let's just say you don't have a huge digital footprint, which is kind of a mixed blessing. I think your LinkedIn was the first thing that pulled up with the search.
Okay, so I actually don't have any social media. The only thing I have is LinkedIn. So, okay, good to know that people are scoping me out on there.
Hey. I mean, if you see a bunch of blow-ups from a bunch of different companies that are all Omaha based, you know why.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're coming into, as you mentioned, it's an established program with an established track record of seeking excellence, whether it's our preseason games. I don't think we've lost a preseason game to an MLS team. We've only lost to one MLS team in the history of the club. In Open Cup,
no pressure.
Made play.
Yeah.
I mean,
thanks for the reminder, Luke.
Made playoffs. Hey, we're just trying to set reasonable expectations. But there is a very strong base that build on. And as a first year here, new to the program, relatively short lead time going into the season to build the squad you need, coming in with set players from last year and previous years. What reasonable goals do you have that you're hoping to achieve during your first season?
Yeah, I'm losing you a little bit, Luke. It was going out a bit. Are you still there?
Sorry. I was saying, what reasonable goals do you have for your first season with Union Omaha?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, the team has been competitive every single season, right? So we want to continue to be competitive in every single game. And then I think this year is really about making sure, especially at the beginning of the season, that our style is understood by everybody. And I always think for me as a coach, it's about two things, right? It's about making sure that our messages and what we want to see is super, super clear for the players, but then also making sure that the players are comfortable, with that messaging, with what we're asking them to do, because it may be super clear, but then they're not comfortable doing it and it's not going to work. So just making sure that the players are clear and that they're comfortable with what we're asking them to do. And I think that will give us a great platform to go on and build for the future.
And I think that ties back into the article that you wrote for usyouthsoccer.org, because you said in that article, yeah, you explained that delayed gratification is something we must willingly endure as youth coaches. Well, now you're a pro coach.
Yeah.
There's still going to be that delayed gratification because you're installing a new system. How do you balance that mentality with the win right now professional mentality?
Yeah, and I think, look, that article that I wrote, Rich, was many years ago, and that was when I was a youth coach, right? So don't think it's just going to be a development club now. I've been in winning environments for the last 3 years now at first team level, and understand that people are going to judge you on whether you win or lose on the weekend. I think the older players or the more experienced the players are that you work with, and the better they are, the quicker they're going to pick things up, right? And the quicker they're going to pick ideas up. And I think part of the reason why I was so attracted to this job is there were a real strong nucleus of returning players and a nice mix, right? So you had some young players that had maybe just come out of college and just finished their first seasons, and then you had a bunch of guys that have been there and done it and got the t-shirt, right? And guys that are experienced pros that have know what it takes to win at this level. So I think that was something that appealed to me and something that I think I can tap into straight away here.
So have you had a chance to talk to any of the returning players so far? We've got a couple that have been here since the very beginning of the club. You've got relative newcomers to the club, but seasoned veterans like Luis, Connor Doyle, who was announced earlier today, recording this Thursday. I think it's Thursday. My days of the week are off. But when you're talking to those guys, what are you hearing from them about either the club or the field going into this season?
Yeah, so I've spoken to everybody. I think my first week on the job, I called every single player that was signed. Connor was another one of the guys that I called as well. So I spoke to everybody, and just had a conversation, just trying to get to understand them as human beings first and foremost, because behind every soccer player, right, it's a human being. So just trying to build a relationship with the guys, understand what makes them tick. And then getting their perspective as well, right? Like, there would have been things that they loved about the last regime, and there would have been things that maybe they want to see change a little bit with me coming in. So just asking them honest questions, getting honest answers, just trying to be as transparent as possible about how we're going to work, but then getting their input as well, because they're the ones that have to play the game. So I think it's really important that you listen to the players, you understand what each individual likes, but then you get a feeling for the group as well through having those conversations with each and every one of them. So, I think I've spoken to all of them at least twice now, and planning on meeting a bunch of them, if not all of them, next week before we start pre-season on February 6th.
You seem to truly enjoy the facets of the game behind the scenes, like recruiting and developing players. When you were at El Paso and you had the recruiting database and you had the squad modeling and all that kind of stuff that you developed, is that intellectual property of El Paso, or were you able to bring some of that with you to Omaha?
Yeah, so we'll set up our own one here in Omaha. obviously there's a lot of players on that type of database and things like that. So El Paso are not going to go out and sign all of them. That's stuff I'd done independently prior to joining El Paso as well. So me, Ladule, Kevin will have access to our own version of that. I guess when I was with El Paso, it was heavily focused on players in the USL Championship, and now we'll alter that to be more focused on USL 1 players and players coming out of college as well. So that's something we're in the process of building out. There's a ton of names in it already. We're obviously heavily involved in the recruiting process right now. And I think as the season goes on and, once we have more time to understand the league, to understand who else might be out there, then that'll fill out and make recruitment way easier going into year 2.
So with that level, obviously there's no pro rel in the States. Something some people are very bitter about. Some people are, good for us, whatever. We've pulled, I believe it was the year before you arrived, because you arrived in 2020, or was it 21 to El Paso?
Yeah, the beginning of 2021.
Okay, so it would have been 2 years prior. It was our only previous connection to El Paso was Sebas Contreras, who wore the armband for us in the 2020 season. Great player, coming with a lot of experience there. But with that level of the back and forth between the two, we saw earlier today former Union Omaha player Devin Boyce announced for Greenville. Is it that difficult to draw a championship player here off of that database to a club with a winning history where their level might have been quasi starter at a championship, or versus maybe not a guaranteed starter, because nobody's a guaranteed starter until they are. Is it difficult? Are you seeing any, or I guess, are you seeing any difficulty bringing players of a already professional or championship caliber that aren't getting that playing time there to Omaha?
It's a really good question. I think, if you put yourself in the shoes of a championship player, because it's, a higher league, you're thinking, right, I'm a championship player, I want to stay in the championship and prove myself in the championship, whether or not I played a ton last year or not. But then I think you get to a certain stage in the off season where maybe the championship offers are not coming, or they're not the offers you thought they were going to be. And then you start to look at League One, right? And I think there's no better place than Union Omaha. If you look at the club's track record of success on the pitch, but then also moving players onto some of the top clubs in the championship, and now obviously into the MLS with Ryan Jeeba. I think if I'm a championship player and I'm saying, okay, I don't have a championship offer that I'm happy with right now, for me, the place to be in League One will be Union Omaha, just because they've, propelled so many guys onto bigger and better things over the last 3 years.
So off of that, got to ask, you've been in Omaha now a week, maybe a week, 5 days?
Yeah, 5 days, yeah.
What do you think?
It seems like a really nice city. The obvious difference to El Paso is I've kind of gone from one extreme to the other, right? Like El Paso is just blisteringly hot all the time, and Omaha is absolutely freezing right now. So that's the biggest adjustment. But it's been good. Like we went out to eat last night in the old market, my wife and I. So we got to see that area. We live in Benson. We just got a place here. So I'm surrounded by boxes right now, which you guys can't see, thankfully, on the screen. But nice, like a really nice city. And before I came here, people were telling me great things about it. So just looking forward to exploring a bit more and getting to know the people who, so far have been great, been super friendly with us.
Is there anything that you and your wife are most excited about experiencing here in Omaha?
Well, I think if you've been listening to all the interviews I've been doing, you'd hear that I'm a Tottenham fan. And I think there's a Spurs bar around the corner here in Benson.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, we're looking forward to checking that out. And No, I think just kind of seeing the atmosphere that the fans can bring on March 26th when we play Forward Madison at UNO, I think that's going to be, you know, a great moment for us, and just getting to know the people in the community.
Yeah, you outed yourself as a Tottenham fan.
I know. I was
Like,
saying to the guys, they were saying like, you know, what team? And I'm like, guys, should I really be saying this? Like, there's going to be some Arsenal fans, you know, that follow the Union here. They're like, nah, it's fine, it's fine. So maybe I shouldn't have done that, but yeah, my sins. I'm a Spurs fan.
I mean, Rich there is Aston Villa.
Yep.
Okay.
You've got at least one compatriot in the front office with Jack.
Yeah.
But you know, in Benson, you've got they got the Spurs sticker in the window, but I don't think there's a huge Spurs, and maybe I'll get chewed out on the internet for this. Huge Spurs community for it. They'll put the game on for you, but
I'm going to be the only one in there. Yeah, is that what you're telling me?
They were just waiting for Dom to arrive. Now they're going to be popping up everywhere.
I mean, with Benson, you've got some great bars there. Liverpool being the largest supporters group in that area somehow, but there's the soccer community on a Saturday morning in Benson is definitely an environment that's worth getting out for. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because my team is losing to somebody they should not be right now. It just hurts. Ajax.
Oh, okay.
They're having a rubbish season. Just trash.
Well, Dom, outside of the soccer universe, what are some of your big passions, hobbies, all that kind of stuff to escape away from soccer?
Yeah, it can be all-consuming, as you guys probably know. So it can be tough to find time away from the game. I think my wife and I are pretty big travelers. We like to visit different countries, different cities, and get out and explore as much as we can. She's actually from the Dominican Republic originally, and we were back there for a couple of weeks right before the holiday. So that was good, traveling. And then, you know, one thing that maybe is going to make me sound a lot older than I am, but during COVID, I really got into gardening and sort of making my own or growing my own vegetables and things like that. So yeah, I guess gardening is one of them. I love raising vegetables and tomatoes, cucumbers, even made watermelons actually. Grew watermelons a couple of years back. So it's too hot for that in El Paso. It was just killing everything I kind of grew. So looking forward here in Omaha having a bit more pleasant weather over the summer that won't kill my vegetables off.
Yeah, you should have pretty good success growing some of that stuff here.
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
I mean, it is a farming state, so theoretically everything should be good. Summers, they're maybe not El Paso hot, but you haven't hit either of our extremes. You'll get there, but it's buckle up. With moving, you spent time in New York, fair bit of time in New York, with El Paso, London as well, and now Omaha. What is one thing you have not seen in Omaha compared to other places you live that you'd like to see here? And if it's a soccer specific stadium for the pro team, we would accept that answer.
I think I'm going to go with that. I haven't seen much of Omaha yet, so I'll go with the soccer specific stadium.
All right. That's I think the only leading question I'm going to ask here.
Well, being that you are new to Nebraska, I feel like we should introduce you to some laws that still exist, are just a little antiquated in Nebraska. So I dug up 3 for you just so you can get yourself started on the right path here.
Do I need to write these down, Rich, or what? Are they going to be important?
Yeah,
to
I think it would be very important to write these down. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So number one, if a child burps during church, their parents may be arrested.
Is that
Just
serious?
throwing that out there.
Okay.
Number two, in the state of Nebraska, it is illegal to go whale fishing. Side note, we don't have any whales in Nebraska, so do with that what you will.
And then what happens if the parent burps in church? Like, does the parent get arrested, or do the kids get arrested, or the priest?
The kids get arrested.
The kids get. All right, that's only fair, right?
Yeah, it works both ways. So if you're ever in a really bad mood and you're, angry with your kid, just burp. Get them out of there. And lastly, a man is not allowed to run around with a shaved chest.
What? Like, is anyone in that?
I don't know. I let my chest hair grow, so I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, same. It's not one I'm worried about. I'm just thinking, like, do they have a chest hair police on every corner or something in the summer, or?
Based on my drive to work. With those terrible laws, I'm just glad I don't live in Nebraska, so we're safe. We are beyond excited to have you here. Your track record at all levels has been great. I do have to ask, because you spent time with America's arguably most storied club, the Cosmos, during not quite hiatus years, apparently. What was your time like at the Cosmos?
So it was 2020, right? So it was COVID. And my wife and I had just come back from Spain. We'd spent a couple of years living in Spain. And I guess for me, it was really like a beautiful chapter of my life that ended way too short. So when I was a young coach working at Brooklyn Italians and Jersey Express, I would go and watch the Cosmos when they first kind of came back, and they had guys like Raul and Marcos Senna. Carlos Mendez was the captain. So I would go and watch them and take notes on training, speak to Gio, speak to Carlos Llamosa, and just kind of understand what they were doing, why they were doing it. So then for me, I guess 6-7 years later, to go back as Carlos Mendez's assistant, as his right-hand man, it was really just fantastic for me. I'd kind of come full circle with the club, and to be honest, I kind of thought that was going to be me for years, right? I thought I was going to be with the club. I was going to work alongside Carlos, who I love, just a fantastic guy. I'll always be super grateful to Carlos for the opportunity he gave me to go and work with him, and loved working with him every day. Great players, great setup, but it was COVID, and our whole project was about finding top young American players, developing them, and then selling them into Europe. Rocco, the owner, was owning Fiorentina at the time, still owns Fiorentina, and I think just with COVID and all the financial implications that came with it, it became impractical to keep the club running at the same level. And I think one thing about the Cosmos is when they've done things as a club, they've always tried to do it at a good level. And I guess they decided that financially, because of the hit they took with COVID, it just wasn't feasible anymore. So I was really disappointed and kind of really deflated when the club sort of went out of business and our contracts ended. But yeah, I look back on it with a lot of fondness, and Carlos and I are great friends. I love speaking to Carlos, just a great person, and real fond memories of my time with the club.
I think you said in the past that you caught the coaching bug when you were still at Limestone University as a player. And then you've had great experiences with other coaches, like you just said, over at Cosmos. I think you were under some great coaching staff over at St. John's. Who is your biggest influence for coaching style and approach and all that?
That's a great question. So I've got quite a few. So I don't know if I could say one is the biggest. I think in terms of kind of methodology, how to bring to life in training what you're going to see on a Saturday, right, in a game. I think Mark Lowry, who's now at Indy, who's the head coach at Indy, Mark is an incredible coach, and I think he's really got super skills in terms of being able to dissect what's going to happen on a Saturday and kind of drip feed that through exercises throughout the week in training. So Mark is a huge influence on me. Has been since literally the first day I worked with him. I was super impressed. I guess my best friend back in England, when we were both kind of still chasing the dream to be a player, he walked away at, I think, around 17 or 18 and decided he was going to be a coach. His name's Adam Lawrence, and he's now working for Manchester United. I think he's their under 16 or 17 coach. Should probably know that, right? But anyway, he's working there now, and I think, seeing his pathway and how he was able to progress as a coach really made me think, oh wow, like, if Adam can do it, maybe I can do it. So he was a big influence on me. And then, I guess the other guy, Dave Mazer, who you mentioned at St. John's University, has just been, so successful over so many years there. Somebody that gave me my first start in coaching, and I think really exposed me early on to what it meant to work with good players. We had some top players playing at St. John's, guys like Connor Lay, Tim Parker, Rafi Diaz, guys that all went on to play in the MLS or top levels of USL. So I was able to work with those players at a young age, and I was able to see how Coach Mazer managed those players and how he prepared a team for a game. And I think his attention to detail and his willingness to, I guess, leave no stone left unturned was huge, and left a real lasting impact on me.
And in 2016, you were honored as one of the top 30 coaches in the country under the age of 30. Talk a little bit about how it felt to receive that award.
I've got to be honest, Rich, I'd feel a lot better if I could receive that award now and still be under 30 now. But way over that, maybe I can get in 40 under 40 or something now. No, look, it's always nice to be recognised. I think, going through that process, being in that program, it's basically a development program for young coaches, right, that have shown some potential or promise in some category. And it's not all guys or girls that want to be in the program, right? It might be people that are really good working in the community or, working with special groups. So I think it was a great program. I think, for me to be recognised is always nice, but I'm not somebody that likes to pat myself on the back or, really be looking for the spotlight. That's not really me. That's not really my personality or how I live my life. I was able to connect with a really good mentor, Glenn Crooks, who actually has his own radio show now. Glenn, he was a coach at Rutgers and LIU Brooklyn for a long time, had a ton of success. Coach Carly Lloyd at Rutgers, I believe. So working with Glenn and having a mentor in that capacity was, I guess, really, really helpful for me. But then while I was in that program, I think the biggest takeaway I had was that I needed to take responsibility for my own development. And I was talking about this to Glenn earlier. And I had a Spanish assistant at Brooklyn Italians who I thought was just fantastic in terms of, session design and how he thought about a game, how he structured things. And he and I worked really well together. And, when I got into this program, I thought, well, if I'm serious about being a top coach, maybe I should go and see another style of coaching. And I went to Spain really because of what I'd seen from Jorge, who was my assistant at Brooklyn Italians. I was like, this guy's amazing, but he's not working for Barca or Real Madrid, right? He's had to come and work in Brooklyn. So let me go and see what these guys in Spain are like and how good they are, because they must be incredible. So that kind of led me to taking that decision while I was in that program. I finished the program out and then went over and lived in Spain for a couple of years.
So when in Spain, you were working in the academy system, were you doing primarily scouting or coaching or a mix of both? Because obviously with these larger clubs, there's a much more developed scouting network, a better feeder system. Was there more, I guess, more of an emphasis for you in taking existing players and developing them, or bringing in new players and getting them into the system?
Yeah, so my job was primarily working in the pre-academy at Espanyol. So those younger players are feeding up into the academy system. I think because I primarily went there, I didn't have a job lined up with Espanyol when I landed in Spain. I kind of met some people. They got me into a partner school program with the club. Then from there, I started working in the pre-academy and coaching one of their teams. I think in Spain it has a different name. I think it's the under 10s that I started coaching in their pre-academy. So because I was always there watching other training sessions from other coaches, watching the first team, watching the reserves, they would just kind of throw things at me like, oh, can you go and watch a player for us? Or can you do this? Can you do that? We have a group coming over, would you train them? So I would do a little bit of everything. But my primary duties were, training within the pre-academy program.
So that must have set you up pretty well for all the different roles you've been set since, in kind of an ad hoc coach, if you will. Being this your first head coaching gig at a professional level, are you planning to kind of assign that sort of deal as things happen, as things grow, to your assistant coaches? You picked guys who have a lot of experience, but also seem like they can be just as versatile. As you find new opportunities, are you looking to utilize them in whatever way is possible?
Yeah, and I think, look, when you're working, we're not at an MLS club that has a, incredible, resource for staffing, right? Where you've got, 5 or 6 assistant coaches and a goalkeeper coach and a set piece coach and a scouting department. That's not the case at most clubs, right, around the world. You only really get that in the top levels, right, where there's a ton of money being pumped into those clubs. So I think maybe that's a little bit of a misconception that everybody's a specialist. I think when you're at this level, or even in the USL Championship, you've got to wear a lot of hats, and you've got to wear them well. Because if you can't help out in scouting or you can't help out in analysis, then there's somebody else out there that can, right, and can bring some more value. So, for me, I like to think all the different jobs I've had in my career have helped prepare me to be a head coach, because I've always worked for programs or clubs that haven't had expansive staffs, right, where you've had to do more than one thing, where you've had to do your own analysis, or you've had to do your own scouting and recruitment. And I think, for me as a coach or as a professional, it's just made me so much more well-rounded than, let's say I went and worked for Manchester United and was always just a coach within their under 14s or under 15s and under 16s. Because you've got way more support at a club like that, I think you end up becoming just a specialist at just coaching, rather than being able to, help a lot with recruitment, help a lot with analysis, help a lot with every different aspect that's involved in the job. And I think, Kevin and Ladule have that background as well, where they've worn a lot of different hats and can add value in a lot of different areas. So for me, I think there's a ton of positives to be gained from people like that have done a little bit of everything, while primarily being coaches, obviously, like myself.
And we've already established that you and Ladule met in those certification classes. How did you and Kevin meet?
So when I was working at St. John's University, Kevin was also a university coach or college coach. I can't remember which school he was at, but there were camps ran by some kind of bigger college coaches. And what they would do is bring in college coaches from all different programs all across the country. So kids would go there to try and be recruited. And Kevin was one of the coaches on one of the camps I was working. And we worked a few camps together, became friends, and just kind of stayed in touch through that.
Cool.
So, with you being here, settled, well, you've got boxes everywhere, settled-ish. Camp starting in a little over a week. What do you want from the fans this year? You get a say in what you get from the players. You can see them day in, day out. But what do you want from the fans this year?
That's a great question. I think if you ask any coach in the world what they want from their fans, it's to be supportive, right, and get behind the guys as much as they possibly can, to make it as difficult as possible for the opposition as well. And yeah, just to make sure they're showing up, they're loyal, they're supportive, and they're giving the guys everything they've got, because it makes a difference. I've been in stadiums where there's one man and his dog, and then I've been in stadiums that are packed and are really raucous, and there's a great atmosphere, and it just makes such a difference to the atmosphere of the game and the motivation of the players. So just want the fans to bring some energy and support the guys the best they can, because the guys are going to give you everything.
There's a hardcore fan. His name is Zach, and I know he's going to want to ask this question of you, so I'm going to ask it for him. What are your thoughts on flares?
I think as long as they're not hitting any players, they're good. I think you're not throwing the opposition goalkeeper or anything like that. But yeah, I think anything that can build an atmosphere, whether it's drums or flares, to me, it's all good and all adds to that atmosphere and making Werner Park a hostile place to play for opposition teams.
You just made an even bigger fan out of Zach, so well done.
I just have a follow-up question to your man and the dog. Was it a good dog?
To be honest, I don't know. I never went and introduced myself to the dog, but so he never ran onto the pitch, so he's probably a good dog.
All right. With Werner Park, I know we talked a little bit about this at the beginning. Werner Park being I think by inches, the smallest allowable FIFA professional sized pitch. With that, but also the difficulties that come with the turf transition for the infield. Is there some way? Obviously, detail not necessary, but have you looked at how that varies, that texture varies? Because there are certain times where you've got a speed bump in the middle of the pitch, guys falling over just by walking, like with nobody around. It's a great environment to watch a game, but I can't imagine it's the best to play on. Is there a way that you're formulating how best to bring these new guys who aren't going to get a chance to play on that until probably what is it? June is our first, or May is our first announced game at Werner Park. So I know our first two are at Caniglia. That's a nice smooth artificial turf pitch up and down. But getting these new guys accustomed to a very different pitch than what they've ever played on.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, from what I've seen of the pitch or the field, it looks like they do a great job with the conversion. The pitch always looks in really good condition to me, and I know sometimes these clubs that share a stadium with a baseball team, the conversion can be hit or miss. But every game I've watched, the conversion's always looked in pretty good shape. Now, I know sometimes it looks a little bit different on TV than when you actually play on it. But most of these guys that have been around the USL will be used to playing on pitches that have been converted from a baseball diamond. So I don't see too many problems. If anyone is falling over in the conversion, hopefully it's the opposition centre backs and not our own. But no, to me it looks like a great surface. I think trying to get on there and train is one way of preparing for it, right? The day before the game, or potentially 2 days before the game. Getting on there, making sure the players are comfortable with the surface, I think is super helpful. It's something we had in El Paso, right? El Paso, very similar in that, we shared with the Chihuahuas, the baseball team there. And, we never really had any problems with it. So, touch wood, that'll be the same here.
All right. definitely a promising thing. My only worry I have is guys get too used to that really nice pitch over at Cadiglia those first 2 games, because that's some good turf. Rich, I'm not sure if you got anything else you want to throw out there.
No, I think we've covered a lot. So, Dom, I really appreciate you joining us and answering the questions. It's really nice to speak with you.
No, it's my pleasure, guys. Rich, Luke, it's been my pleasure to chat with you, and looking forward to meeting you guys and the rest of the fans in person soon.
For sure. Thrilled to have you on board. Thrilled to see what you can do with the team. It's gonna be a good season, a long season. We're starting here in what, a month and a half, and you've got to fit a preseason in there. We've got announced games versus Tulsa and St. Louis too. Obviously, you got to flesh out the roster, so you got a very busy month and a half ahead of you. We'll look forward to seeing what you do there. One last question, and I know this is your first time listening while you're actually on it, but who gives a hoot?
We do.
We do.
Do you want to do that again? I was a little early. You want to do that again?